night vision goggles, and there's been a real reduction in the number of illegal immigrants coming into the country for the purpose of working. Now, here's where the big problem is that we have a fair amount of drug running. And I think this goes back more to your question on the violence side of things. I was dismayed to see and to be taken into tunnels. There are tunnels all over the place down there that citizens on the southern side of the fence have now dug under the fence and have gone for miles. And these are very highly sophisticated tunnels. Tunnels with air flowing through them, tunnels with lighting systems in them, tunnels that you can stand up in, tunnels that have been drilled with legitimate drilling equipment. And it's a constant battle now with the Border Patrol to begin to interdict drugs because of the amount of money that's involved. Now, just in this 31-mile section that I visited a couple of weeks ago, in the last year, the Border Patrol has stopped over 1,050,000 pounds of marijuana that they've confiscated coming into the country. And so I was encouraged to see the amount of resources that have been applied to the border. I was encouraged to see how effective and how professional our Border Patrol has been. And I've been encouraged by the reduction of illegal workers coming into the country. But there is still more work to be done. And I don't believe that we're ever going to finish this work until we have a totally different type of economy going on in Mexico. One of the questions that I think rarely gets asked is, why is it when you look at the border between Canada and the United States, it looks so much different than the border between Mexico and the United States? Why is it that south of the border into Mexico, you have so much poverty when they've got they have billions of gallons of oil? They're one of the large exporters of oil in this area. They've got natural resources. They've got beaches and resorts. Why is it that that economy south of the border doesn't work, but the economy north of the border does? And that's where I think the American people, and particularly our government and State Department, could begin to facilitate Mexico in identifying the types of reforms that they need to have in their government. They have a very socialistic style of government. They have completely taken and flipped upside down their economy by repressing the most successful people in the country and taking from them, so they've lost incentives to work and provide good jobs. They've got an economy that just plain and simply doesn't work. So people are trying to flee it, and they're now using illegal activities to try to get out of their poverty. And that I also think is part of our long-term strategy. So I'd like to continue on with the conversation, and we're going to go to John in Appleton. John, are you there?
Yes, Congressman Ribble. Hey,
thanks.
I've received a couple of brochures from your office regarding Medicare and Social Security, and about how it's going broke, and all the things that are wrong with it. And nowhere on these brochures does it state how you intend to address those, or what you propose to do for those.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the queue, and let's talk a little bit about Medicare and Social Security and some of the fixes that I think are available to us. We talked a little bit earlier on Social Security, raising the cap to increase revenue, means testing it so that we're not paying billionaires benefits, and then taking a look at the age and how do you adjust that slowly over time. I think those three things on the Social Security side would have a huge impact on moving it. Those are kind of things that I think make sense, and they have pretty broad support based on what people have said to me and feedback that I've gotten from constituents. Now, on the Medicare is much more difficult to get your arms around, because we have a system of health care in the country that's badly broken. The Affordable Care Act was intended to begin to place some of those fixes in. And I think until we get some type of answer, and this coming soon from the Supreme Court, on what they're going to do in relationship to the Affordable Care Act, because I might take one tack if that stays law, and I might take another one if it doesn't. But let's just say, for example, that the Supreme Court decides that the individual mandate is unconstitutional, I think that's the most likely result of that Supreme Court case based on the question that the justices were asking. I don't know whether that's going to be what they're going to say, but let's say that they do throw it out. That would allow us to begin to put in reforms in place on the healthcare system to begin to drive healthcare costs down. Without driving healthcare costs down, Medicare becomes problematic no matter what is done at the government level because the costs themselves are too high. You still have Americans living longer, you still have them being healthier, you still have the 10,000 people retiring a week, and you still have fewer workers. And so we have to begin to address the actual health, living, and health styles of the American people. And you do that, from my opinion, by doing a couple of things. You begin to reconnect consumers with physicians. Right now, consumers are first connected to the employer, and then the employer connects them to the insurance, and then the insurance connects them to the provider. What we need to do is begin to remove the layers of middlemen in there, particularly the employer, and begin to have Americans taking more personal responsibility and accountability for their own health care. And by this, I mean every single employer. Let's even pick an employer that's providing health care for free, where the employee's not paying anything for it. In reality, what's going on is that business owner is providing that health care benefit in the form of lower wages and higher costs of goods to the consumer. They're able to raise their wages up, provide additional income for individuals to own their own insurance. Now, when they own their own insurance, it becomes totally portable. We need to reform the insurance system so that when people have that now portable insurance and they own it themselves, that they can't be canceled. That they can't be canceled if in fact they get cancer or there's some major disease. They have to be protected. That's the whole purpose of insurance. I mean, that would be like saying if we didn't provide that protection, that would be like saying you can buy a homeowner's insurance, but if your house gets hit by a tornado, the insurance company doesn't have to pay it. And that's part of the problem that we had. These types of reforms need to be put in place. Now, when the individual family has an insurance policy that fits their needs, and they feel the price pressure of it, they will become better shoppers. But most importantly, if they're smokers, they're likely to stop smoking because that will reduce their homeowners, their health care insurance. If they're unfit, if they'll start eating better, and we'll start to create a society that is healthier because every individual family feels that market pressure on their own personal wallet, and that's one of the things. Next, you have to address tort reform. You have to address why is insurance costing so much, and why is healthcare itself so expensive? Well, if doctors have to do so many defensive moves to make sure that they cover every single base, then you're going to drive costs up because doctor behavior is driving costs up. We have to have some type of tort reform that's in place that still allow people that have been damaged to have some recourse, but on the other hand, that actually changes physician behavior. So we can set standards and begin to set standards for X disease, and if the doctors do all of these steps, that is normal, that fits the main group of people, then that's the standard that they do, and they shouldn't be able to be sued if they're doing all of those things. And then if consumers want to purchase tests above and beyond that, they should be allowed to be able to do that. But having real reform that changes physician behavior will drive malpractice insurance down, which drives costs down, which you have fewer tests. Then finally on Medicare, moving from what's currently a fee-for-service system, where we now incent physicians and hospitals to create lots of different services because they get paid fees for every single thing they do, to a system that is more values and outcome-driven, where you reward really good outcomes rather than reward lots and lots of services. You can drive the cost down as well. Now, these are some of my ideas, and some of them are mine. Some of them I've heard from you all, and I want to hear more from you as you come up with ideas and things that you think would be helpful to help drive these costs down. I would love to hear from you. And so, but thanks for asking the question. It's a perfectly legitimate question, and I appreciate you asking it. The reality is, everybody here wants some type of fix. I've not heard Democrats or Republicans, without regard to all the TV commercials people see about this guy wants to end Medicare and everybody wants to scare seniors and all of that. And to put that behind you, the fact of the matter is these programs are valued by both parties. They're going to be there for seniors. I've not seen any reforms that will take those programs away from seniors. In fact, even as much as people criticize the House budget, the Ryan budget, Medicare costs or Medicare spending goes up every single year in each of those budget years for the 10-year window. And so when you see all this talk about ending Medicare, you know, it's all silliness. You shouldn't be frightened about it. Your members of Congress on both sides of the aisle value these programs and want to make sure that they're preserved. Thanks for asking the question, and I'm going to go ahead to Conover to Perry. Perry, are you on the phone with me?
Yes, Congressman.
Hey, thanks for being on. What's on your mind?
Hey, I'm glad I got on. I've tried other times. I might have even talked to you one time on the phone, or maybe it was somebody in your office. But anyway, my comment is, I have a comment. And I've been hearing on these phone talks that Social Security has IOUs in it. Now, there was an article in a Vilas County paper that said those same things, that there's nothing but a bunch of IOUs in his paper. So I called the Social Security office in, I think it was D.C., and I read that article to them.
Yeah. And
the young man that answered the phone told me, he says, well, all I'll say to you is that's a lie. And he says, I says, well, how do I find out the facts? And he said, go to the library and look up a book. There's lots of books written on Social Security. And so I did. I went there, and, well, it was almost overwhelming. But I did find one. It was called The Battle for Social Security by Nancy J. Altman. And I got this out of the Hayward Lecouture Library. And it's a big book. But it was one of the most eye-opening things. And they did state, and this went back to Bush. It was James Baker. I'm an independent. I'm just want to say this. So I have no aspirations on one party or the other. I think there's good people in both parties, and I make my decision on it. But it told how Bush was in the. They'd had a commercial, and they showed him with these papers, and she said those are bonds backed by money. It's you don't actually see cash sitting on a table. They're just written bonds. And she says China has the same pieces of paper, and she says, and if you don't think they don't think there's money behind that, she says, you would be kidding yourself. And what it was is they said James Baker, he was the fiduciary. I don't remember I know he was in the Bush government, but
Secretary of State for a while.
Okay, he was supposed to, as fiduciary, transfer money from the general fund into Social Security. That's his primary job. I mean, that's his. I don't know how to say it. I'd call it top job. In other words, that was his responsibility that he was supposed to take it. And when they were trying to, I'm 68. I'm on Social Security and I love it. And I'm healthy and I'm on Medicare and I have no complaints about that. I'd like some fixes in our health care situation. But what I was going to say is, James Baker, at that time when they were trying to go to private retirements, and in this book, it'll tell how the history of Social Security came about. I didn't realize that I think it was the three people that actually drew up Social Security were from Wisconsin, University of Madison. I never knew that.
Yeah, me either.
And one of them is alive, or was alive as of a year ago, and he had a simple formula for fixing it now, and it had something to do with inheritance tax, which I'd never heard of. But anyway, what I'm saying is, James Baker failed to make the payment. They were trying to get us to go to a private, get out of Social Security, and they said more harm was done to Social Security, and that this book says that. And this lady, I don't know if she's a Republican, but she worked for Republicans. That's all I know. And he failed to pay that payment, causing Social Security to lose $10 million. And I thought, our people in government shouldn't play games. I'm saying this to you, and I read everything you send me. If I can get in on these phone conversations, I like to hear other ideas, but I think there's simple things we can do to fix Social Security. I think it's a great thing. Believe me, I retired at 63. I would have retired earlier, but it was a health care issue. My health insurance would have gone to, I think it was $2,400 for a good, and I went with a lesser one because I just that was too much for me, or at least in my opinion, it was too much for me to pay. I shouldn't say it that way. I believe in good health care.
Sure.
But I want to see you and the other people in our government, I want to see constructive working with, like you with Democrats, whoever it is, and take care of this issue. I just want to express to you my concern. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying, go read a book on Social Security. It's almost, I'd like to actually, I thought I'd read it again, but you'll learn things that is not just pieces of paper. As the young man said, there are no IOUs here. So the government cannot touch that money. It's got to be paid over. That's the fiduciary's responsibility. And I want people to hear this, because I called the editor back and I told him what I'm telling you, and he says, I asked him, where did he get his information? Well, he said Fox. He said, well, everybody thinks that. But I said, if it's a lie, you shouldn't be passing on, because I said, there are seniors that live up here that read that, and they believe you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, although, Perry, I will tell you that he's wrong.
Who's wrong?
I will tell you this young man who you talked to is wrong. There is a ledger balance. There are inter-traded bonds within the federal government that moves dollars back and forth. But every single time, every single pay period that Social Security comes up with, there is a transfer from the general fund to the Social Security Trust Fund to meet that obligation. And we have to make that transfer, and that is why the debt owed by the public, which is at about $10 trillion, the total debt owned by the government is $15.7 trillion. About $10 trillion of that is debt owed by the American people. The rest of the debt is owned by foreign bondholders of the United States government. But
not in Social Security.
Yeah, and let's see if I can explain it to try to get it so I can articulate it the best way possible. The trust fund does not have a cash balance in it. It has